Hello everyone and welcome to the Efficiency for Access Partner Research Expo. We're very happy that you could make the time to attend this event this afternoon. I'm going to just briefly run through the remaining topics and timings. We've got two 30-minute sessions remaining as part of this event. And the event that you're in now obviously is solar dryers. The session after that will be Powering Jobs Phase 2, how decentralised renewable energy technologies can unlock on-farm and off-farm employment. But before we get into the topics, just a few bits of housekeeping. The format today is a presentation followed by an interactive discussion, and we really are very keen to hear your thoughts and questions. During the presentations, if you could please keep your microphones on mute, that would be very much appreciated. At the end of the presentation, you may unmute yourself to ask any questions or put them into the chat if you prefer. At the end of each presentation, you're welcome to stay on for an extended chat with the presenters or move on to the next presentation using the links which we'll put into the chat. And finally, as you can see, we are recording the session today, and that's purely for note-taking purposes. So without further ado, I will now hand over to Liya Thomas from Efficiency for Access, who's going to be our moderator for the first session. Thank you, Liya.
Thank you, Anita. As Anita said, I'm Liya Bensy Thomas. I'm a senior project manager at Energy Saving Trust, and I, along with my colleagues from African Center for Technology Studies, will share our insights from our research on technology trends in solar dryers. I welcome Isaiah and Catherine to introduce themselves now. Isaiah? Are you on mute, Isaiah?
Sorry. Now you can hear me? Yeah,
Yes.
sorry. Yeah, I'm Isaiah Omolo. I work at the African Center for Technology Studies. It's a research think tank institute based in Nairobi, Kenya, under the Agriculture, Food and Nutrition Security Program, where the solar dryer project falls under. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Catherine?
Yeah. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Catherine Kilelu, and I'm also a colleague of Isaiah based at the African Center for Technology Studies, working also on the Agriculture, Food and Nutrition Security Program. Thanks.
Thank you. Next slide, please, Anita. So this research is part of the Liya program, the Low Energy Inclusive Appliance Program, which is a research and innovation program under Efficiency for Access, which is jointly managed by Energy Saving Trust and CLASP. Efficiency for Access is a global coalition aiming to double the efficiency and half the cost of off and peak grid appliance. Next slide, please. So this research on solar dryers is our first research initiative on this technology, and the insights we're sharing were collected from around 15 stakeholders operating in East Africa and India. The general trend we see is that as a relatively new technology, it is yet to be widely adopted in the market, but it is an evolving technology from simple wooden cabinets which had the capacity to dry wet weight of around 40 to 50 kg. The market now has greenhouse dryers that has the capacity to dry up to 2 tons of produce. And there are even hybrid versions that you see that can operate during rainy season or during days of low solar radiation through heat produced by biogas or biomass. But solar dryer as a technology is often seen competing with the conventional open sun drying practices. So the awareness of users about solar dryers and what it offers, which is specifically uniform and hygienic drying in less time, is relatively still limited. And because of this, we see that the market for this technology is still in an emerging stage. Next slide, please. So in East Africa, the initial push for this technology was facilitated by government or donor-funded projects during 2015 and 2017 time. And these initiatives had a piecemeal approach with efforts concentrated more in some counties than the others. So because of this, even today, the demand for solar dryers is concentrated to certain groups of people or specific regions. For example, in Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, we see that a lot of the demand is coming from Lake Victoria region, where solar dryers are used for fish drying, or a lot of the demand is coming from mango farmers who are targeting the export market. And under these government or donor-funded projects, small-scale farmers were encouraged to group themselves into farmer cooperatives to gain access to solar dryers. And these cooperatives help the farmers to pool their resources to reduce losses and manage costs more effectively. And many of these cooperatives are still in operation, but some have withered away. And as several of these projects have closed now, we see that the initial wave of demand for the solar dryers has subsided, and the current demand is driven by individuals who see the economic potential of export market for dried products. For instance, the sales data that we gathered from a few companies suggested that during the initial boom, they were selling up to 100 solar dryers a year, and these days the average has fallen to 50. And this is not necessarily due to less demand, but the affordability constraints. So there are fewer government-funded projects, and most of them are in specific counties or specific regions. So without the project backing, it is difficult for farmers or cooperatives to afford solar dryers. But the demand for dried products in the export market is high, specifically in US, Canada, Europe, Asia, and Arab countries, specifically for high-valued products like mango, which can sell up to 4 or 5 times the price for the fresh mango in the local market. And so this trend sort of indicates that the market for solar dryers is significantly influenced by the demand for dried produce, which is currently being driven by export market. In Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, there is a growing domestic demand for dried products, but it is currently limited to upper middle class. And you see dried products being marketed in high-end supermarkets or hypermarkets. And many a times cooperatives or farmers struggle to access this market. So they would have good quality dried products, but would not know how to reach the market. Next slide, please. So this is an example from India. So there are a few examples from India and even in Kenya where business model involves establishing a value chain for dried products. So here we see the example of Raheja Solar Food Processing in India, who supplies solar dryers to the farmers through donor-funded projects and also through individual sales. The difference that we see here is the buyback system they offer to farmers for their dried produce. The business model is very similar to the dairy market in India. So there are collection centers established in rural areas or nearby towns where farmers can get their dried products quality checked, weighed, and get a fair price for their produce. So Raheja Solar Food Processing then would add value to this product. For instance, they make muesli with dried fruits, dried mango is turned into mango bars, dried tomato is infused into oil, and this is then sold under white labeling in both domestic and export market. So this buyback system where farmers are assured of a price and a market for their dried produce acts as an incentive for farmers to adopt this technology. And this approach demonstrates that simply selling solar dryers to farmers is not sufficient. So it is more effective to offer end-to-end solution to farmers where they not only get access to the technology, but can also secure market to sell their products. And this trend is similar in other technologies as well, like dairy in using milk chillers or horticulture using walk-in cold rooms. And I will stop there and hand over to Isaiah and Catherine.
Yes,
Isaiah,
next
yeah.
slide, please. Yes, next slide. Thank you very much. I will share briefly on the market barriers that we have experienced. The first one is the technology acceptance. Of course, as we have seen earlier, the solar drying is a nascent technology, and it's now competing with the conventional practice, which is open drying. We know that open drying is usually free, and of course, many people use that. So the gap between the open sun drying and solar drying, so that acceptance is still an issue. So you really have to tell people that the solar drying is better than open drying. It's taking time, but it's coming. The second one is about the cost of manufacturing of the solar dryers themselves. This is mainly because many of the materials that are used for fabrication of the solar dryers are usually imported. That includes the fans, the UV sheets, the polycarbonate sheets as well, the galvanized iron and the stainless steel. And so when they import it, then it means the price are usually higher. And so that makes the cost a bit higher. And because of that, then most people may not be able to afford that. But also the second issue is that because there are not many quantities to be manufactured, so there's the issue of the economies of scale. So it means most fabricators will be fabricating maybe one solar per every given time. And so they cannot buy the materials in bulk. And so they'll just buy materials which they will use to make one dryer and leave the others there. So the cost is therefore passed to the buyer, and that makes the prices a little bit higher. The third one is about the sub-quality solar dryers that we have in the market. Because of the high prices of food-grade solar dryers, there's a growing informal market so that anybody can make anything and call it a solar dryer. Now, those are usually cheaper, and they're usually peddled or sold by sales agents and commissions agents. So they can go to convince the farmer that this dryer is very good, yet it's of low quality. And now because of that, and we have had many solar dryers being sold to the market, which are of lower standard, and that has affected the perception that solar dryers are of substandard quality. Now, again, the substandard quality solar dryers, they usually fail to dry the produce, they rust, and because of the rusting, and so the products also that come from them are not of good quality, and so that has a ripple down effect on the sub-quality of both the dryers and also of the products as well. But again, we have the market linkages also as a barrier. Now, most people who use the solar dryers, when they have dried their product, usually they struggle to access the market for the dried products. So that market linkages and market connection. They can have the product, but they don't know where to sell it. And so because they don't have a market for the dried products, then they will not want to invest in the solar dryer. Affordability is also a key issue. Like any other technology, the cost of solar dryers is a concern to many farmers because of the lack of support from mainly mainstream financial institutions. They still consider solar drying not as something to finance. They are still unfamiliar with some of these post-harvest technologies, and so the farmers therefore cannot access finances, and that makes it very not really affordable for them. And because of that, then it makes very difficult for the farmers to access. And of course, you can see the prices there. For 100 kilogram can go until $2,000 US. For a greenhouse dryer, which is mostly used by not small scale, but medium scale farmers, can go up to 4,500 for 500 kilogram. But lastly, but not least, is about the skills gaps that exist in the fabricator. So the people who make the dryers still miss some skills to fabricate the solar drying, especially in the design and engineering that goes behind the scenes. The fans flow rate, the ventilations, the loading capacity, the drying rates, the temperature, the humidity, the furnace size, the biomass, and the Internet of Things that can be used to control the temperatures and the humidity. So there's a lot of skills gap that we experience in the market. And so those are the few barriers that we have highlighted. There could be several, but allow me to stop there and invite my colleague to proceed. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Isaiah. The next slide, and the last slide. So I think, yeah, there's a whole litany of what we're seeing as barriers, but all is not lost. I think as Liya mentioned, we are seeing that there's some things that are happening in the market that are pulling the demand for solar dryers. So what we see as the potential for expanding this growing technology. First, as Liya mentioned, we are seeing expanding and a growing demand for dried products, both internationally and locally, and especially in the areas of fruits, vegetables, and spices like chilies, where the market is demanding for products either directly for marketing or as a use as a secondary product for use in processing. So this demand, I think, is signaling opportunity for many in a context like Kenya, many SMEs, especially small enterprises or fabricators that are now emerging to deliver this technology. As Isaiah has mentioned, there are some barriers and challenges that such SMEs are facing, but we still see that there's an expansion. So a recent work that we have done, we identified about 14 solar dryer fabricators that had emerged in the last 5 years. So that in itself is a signal that this is a growing market that is attracting small enterprises to deliver this technology. And the other potential that will drive this market is the policy push to promote agri-processing and value addition, including drying. I think in East African region, we see our agro-processing to be really at a very nascent stage. I think we are only processing about 5% of what is produced. And I think government ambitions is to get us to over 30%, at least over 30% processing. So this, for us, are signals and indicators that there's huge potential. It just needs to be stimulated either through policy, but also through opportunities that are provided in the market. As Isaiah mentioned, and even as Liya mentioned, selling a dryer is not an end in itself. It's the opportunity that drying and dried products provide for farmers and also small and medium enterprises in the drying market that will drive the growth of this technology potential. So I think with that, we will open it up for a bit of Q&A. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine. Yeah, we're ready to answer any questions that you may have. And this is beginning. This is an initial research, and we're yet to publish the report. But yeah, we welcome any feedback that you have or any questions that you may have.
Yeah, hello, with Bert Dijking from Wageningen University. I have a question. Did you also look at the yields of the dryers? Because I did, I think 1 year or 2 years ago, a study. What I found that the yields were very low. So it seems that, okay, the sun is for free, so let's waste the energy from the sun.
Catherine, do you have an answer for that?
Sorry, by yield, do you mean the drying rate of the dryers?
Not so specifically the drying rate, but the amount of solar irradiation that comes into the dryer and actually is used for evaporation of the water from the produce.
Yeah, well, I can't speak on the specifics. Maybe as I can talk about the technical bits. But yes, we are assessing how much solar is coming in, and of course using that to calculate how much time it uses the solar dryers performing when we compare it to open drying. So Isaiah, maybe you can say something about the solar yield.
Yes, thank you very much. One thing that we know that for drying, it should be not more than 60 degrees. When it's above that, it's cooking and not drying. And so the temperatures must therefore be low. Between 50 and 60 is recommended. And so we calculate the drying time and the drying rate. So we start with the weight when the materials are loaded into the dryer, and then we see how long it takes to dry. And so using that calculation, the drying rate, then we got the results to be 8 hours for one shift, which to us was a very good efficiency for drying. But of course, for areas where we have poor soil insulation, or when we have rain or in the night, then we have the hybrid model, which uses biomass. So in the night, then we can use biomass, or when it's rainy season, or there is not enough solar, then we can use the hybrid, which is biomass. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Any other question that we can answer? So there's one question from Russell in the chat, and he's curious to know whether post-harvest loss storage bags were included among the potential solutions. Low technology, but high effective, so I'm told. We have looked into it in the report, but I don't know how practically it is being done on the ground. So we have considered that. I think aromatic bags were used to reduce moisture retention in the dried products, but I don't know how effectively it's been used on the ground. Catherine, I say you can add that.
Yeah, I think our focus has mainly been on fruits and vegetables and less grains in looking at the potential for solar drying. I know there is huge demand for drying grains, and I think this is an area that will most likely also drive the demand for dryers. But from the perspective of growing SMEs, I think what we're seeing is more use for in fruits and vegetable value chains, and in the grain space. I think the open drying, because of the volumes of grains that are needed to be dried, there has been less use of enclosed dryers, and I think the practice still remains open sun drying and less use of dryers. But I think that is an area worth pursuing.
Yes, Hannibal, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Liya. So I have a couple of questions. So my first question is, is there a difference in quality in the final product between sun-dried, let's say sun-dried chips versus solar-dried chips? And my second question would be, in terms of consumer perception or consumer awareness, do you face challenge by consumers? Maybe they think sun-dried product is better, more natural, or vice versa. Or from the end user's perspective, do you face any kind of challenge with the perception of solar-dried products compared to sun-dried products?
Catherine, do you want to take that?
Well, yeah, I'll quickly mention that, yes, in terms of product quality, we see a huge difference. Because you're controlling the drying process, and so you're able to monitor certain parameters to ensure that you get the right quality product. So in terms of color, in terms of, I think even we've done analysis of the kind of nutritional value that is retained. So there is definitely a difference in between open drying and using a dryer. But more importantly, I think is the exposure to certain pollutants when you're doing open drying, whether it's physical pollutants, or whether it's other pollutants within space that is less controlled. So from a food safety perspective, enclosed drying is definitely much better than open drying. So, but Isaiah can answer the second one, please.
Yes, sure. I mean, just to add on top, in the open drying, we have birds, and we have rain, and we have dust, and we have rodents, and everything passing over it. And so, but in the solar dryers, it's enclosed, and so there's a lot of controls that comes with it, and that gives us better quality product. Consumer awareness perception, yes, it needs a lot of engagement. But at the moment, we have a very big growing middle class in Kenya. And because of the seasonality of some of the fruits, like mangoes, for example, pineapples, you'll get them in some seasons. You can't get them in the other seasons. So because of seasonality, then people will go for dried fruit, for example, when they are out of season. And so currently, if you walk into any supermarket in Kenya, you'll get a section for dried products, from vegetables to fruits. So it's coming up, and it's a good move that people are getting to know that dried products are equally as nutritious as the fresh products. Of course, the fresh products are cheaper compared to dried products, that we can't ignore. But when they're not in season, then people will go for the dried products one. Thank you.
And another point on that is, so there are also standards around dried products in Kenya. So there might not be standards right now on solar dryers, but there are standards to market dried products. So that's also comes into consideration when a solar dried product dried in in a hygienic way with temperature control will fetch higher price and will have the standard saying that this is food grade material you can use to sell. So that I think is an important factor to consider as well. And we have one question about is a low-hanging fruit when it comes to scaling the adoption of high-quality solar dryers. Well, I would say that I think it would be improving the awareness of solar dryers. I don't think many people are yet aware about why investing in solar dryer is better from economic perspective. But I don't know, Isaac, Catherine, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, from my perspective, I think, like I said, there are opportunities for growing agro processing in the region, and so governments push and incentives to enable SMEs to emerge and get into that space of drying as one of the ways in which value addition happens. For me, I think is an important low-hanging fruit, and so through government support and incentives, I think we will begin to see more adoption by small and medium enterprises of solar dryers. And again, as Isaiah mentioned, there's growing consumer shifts in terms of consumption, and these are like, especially when you look at healthy snacks. So that segment of healthy snacks where people are increasingly looking at other options apart from traditional snacks. So for me, the market signals new opportunities for new products, and I think this is where we see the opportunity for increasing the use of solar dryers for business and not just promoting it to smallholder farmers from the perspective of food loss. I think that narrative of just using it for addressing food loss, I think needs to expand beyond just thinking about loss, but looking at those market opportunities that are coming up with dried products. Thanks.
We have two more questions. One is the issue of poor quality solar dryers that you mentioned, Isaiah, entering the market. So has any measures been taken to tackle this challenge?
Yes, ABS conducted a training for fabricators, and that was one of the key takeaways, that the fabricators need more training. And so we teamed up with one of the local industrial institute called Kilelu here to give the fabricators training on how to design and fabricate, and of course use the right materials, which is food grade. But also in Kenya, the standards body, which is called KEBS, is currently developing standards for solar dryers, which we hope once the standards are out, then the issue of low quality should be a gone case, because every dryer that will be made will have standards as a mark of quality. Thank you.
Yeah. Catherine, do you have anything to add?
No, I think that's I think one important factor. We see that market the fact that market is not providing guidance for potential buyers or off-takers of this technology is a limiting factor. So that push to get more standards and having a certain mark of quality to assure adopters of this technology that whatever they're buying or whatever they can find in the market is quality, I think is going to go a long way in making people more comfortable in going into the market for solar dryers. But yeah.
And the standards, I believe, is going to come out this year, so it's going to be an immediate action from the Kenyan government. So that's going to be one thing. Yes, Dennis, you have your hand raised.
Yes, sorry, I didn't introduce myself when we were beginning, but the conversation about having a standard in place is an exciting one because I work on the standards body. So as reported by Isaiah accurately, we are developing the standards on a solar dryer, and this has been a gap in Kenya because there is no a measure of what constitutes a quality when it comes to a solar dryer. So as mentioned by Isaiah, anyone else would come out there and have a structure and call it a solar dryer, and when it is taken to the farmer, and then it cannot live to the expectation, and then there's always an issue between the installer and or the farmer. So having a third in place will ensure that we have people complying, and how we intend to also disseminate this information is through conducting a workshop and seminars where we will be meeting with the fabricators and the farmers and highlighting key aspects of the standard of the solar dryer, which they need to always observe and during installation and during use. And this will ensure that we have a market which is aware of the requirements, and this will always ensure that we have quality. Also, those fabricators who will be doing the installation and fabrication of the same will now be certified or have a quality mark. So they'll be entered through the quality requirement of under caps, which is always another process, and they have the S mark. So the S mark will also be guaranteeing a safety, quality of the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. I think that's a useful information. And we have one more question in the chat, which is about the nutrient retention. So we mentioned that in solar dryers, there's higher nutrition of dried products. So has there been any research to back this, saying that nutrient retention of fruit and vegetable using solar dryers is higher, or if there's any work or data to prove that?
I'm not a nutritionist, but I've read I've read several articles that have indicated that yes, drying products, especially through a very controlled environment, so that you get the right moisture retention and less exposure to open sun drying, is good for ensuring that the nutrients are retained. So based on the extensive literature that's out there, I think there is enough evidence to suggest that drying does not deplete the nutrient qualities, especially when it's in a very controlled environment. But I would want the nutritionist to say something and not
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
I'm sure there are quite a few experts on solar dryers and food experts in the room. So yeah, please feel free to jump in and answer questions that we may not have answers to. And there's one more question about the cost of dryers. So which component contributes the most to the high cost? For example, for the cabinet dryer, so what is the component that drives the cost up of a solar dryer? Isaiah, do you know that? Or Catherine?
Yeah, I will come in, but on the solar dryer, which is a greenhouse, the metallic structure that contributes constitutes a big percentage of the cost, the framework, the cost. And if you're adding the furnace, that will also have an impact because you have the fans that blow and all that. And if you incorporate PV system, then that can also bring the cost because of the PV system and the batteries. So the cost can vary, but the structure, the framework should be the highest, or should contribute the highest. Yes, thank you.
So just one clarification. So when you say stainless steel, or the structural part of it is the cost, so is that the reason the locally made ones use cheaper materials, and that's what the rusting happens sooner than the ones that cost high? And so what is the material usually used in the locally made sub-quality dryers, which makes the cost affordable for people?
Yeah, basically tubes that people buy from the local hardware. So they don't check whether it's food grade or non-corrosive or anything. They just pick piece of metal from the hardware and use it as a structure. Yes, that's the problem. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Any more questions? And no? we are happy to take more questions. And so we put our contact details in the chat, and the report that we plan to publish will be ready by September. You can look out the Efficiency for Access website, and we can also share the link once we have it ready with all of you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.